Our countdown begins in southeastern Turkey. At number 10, we find a name whispered with dread: Diyarbakir Prison. Built in 1980, its history is short but drenched in suffering. It quickly became infamous for political prisoners. This was never just incarceration, it was brutal suppression. The Turkish state used it to break the will of opponents, especially Kurdish dissidents. Stories from behind the walls showed a deliberate campaign of terror by those meant to uphold the law. It became known as the Diyarbakir Hell. The danger wasn't other inmates, it was the guards, it was the system. After the 1980 military coup, the prison was run by Captain Esat Oktay Yildirim. His name became synonymous with torture. Inmates faced unimaginable cruelty, severe beatings, electrocution, forced to eat excrement, psychological torment to shatter the human spirit. Guards had free rein, cruelty knew no bounds. Human rights were methodically dismantled day after day. The goal was obliteration, not correction. Life was a constant nightmare. Cells built for a few held dozens, filth and disease. Psychological warfare dominated. Prisoners forced to renounce identities, forced to renounce political beliefs, subjected to endless drills, forced to sing nationalist anthems, punished for the slightest infraction with extreme violence. Many ended their own lives rather than endure another day. Hunger strikes. Self-immolation as desperate protest. The legacy is a deep scar on the nation's conscience. Conditions have reportedly improved, but reputation endures. It stands as a monument to human cruelty and abuse of power. Survivor testimonies and reports confirm dozens died from torture, execution, unlivable conditions. These are not numbers. They are names who were broken. Diyarbakir Prison is a chilling example of how an institution of justice can be twisted into an engine of pure, unadulterated terror. We now travel across the Atlantic to South America, to a country plagued by instability and violence. Our ninth entry is La Sabaneta Prison in Maracaibo, Venezuela. This facility is a stark representation of a failed state where the government has all but lost control. Built to hold around 700 inmates, its population has swelled to nearly 4,000 at its peak. This is not just overcrowding. It is a human catastrophe compressed into a few acres of concrete and steel. In La Sabaneta, the authority of the state is a distant memory. The real power lies within the prison walls, held by ruthless gangs who govern with their own brutal set of laws. The primary danger in La Sabaneta is the complete breakdown of order. The prison is a self-contained city of chaos. Gang leaders known as prains control everything. They manage the distribution of food, water, and even the cells themselves. Inmates must pay for a place to sleep, for protection, and for basic necessities. Those who cannot afford to pay are relegated to the lowest rungs of this brutal society. They sleep in hallways, on rooftops, or in makeshift hammocks exposed to the elements and the constant threat of violence. The guards are either too intimidated or too corrupt to intervene, often complicit in the gang's operations. A notorious incident in 1994 cemented La Sabaneta's horrifying reputation. A brutal gang war erupted within the prison, escalating into a full-blown massacre. The violence raged for days, with inmates using firearms and grenades that had been smuggled inside. When the smoke finally cleared, over 100 prisoners were dead. Many had been burned alive, others dismembered. The event exposed the terrifying reality of life inside. The government had created a monster it could no longer control. This was not an isolated incident. Riots, Fires and gang battles are a regular feature of life and death in this Venezuelan hellhole. For the average inmate, survival is a matter of luck and alliances. Disease runs rampant in the squalid conditions. Cholera outbreaks have been reported due to the lack of clean water and sanitation. Medical care is virtually non-existent. If you get sick or injured, your fate is left in the hands of fate or the whims of a gang leader. La Sabaneta is more than just a prison. It is a microcosm of societal collapse. It is a place where humanity is stripped away, leaving only the most primal instincts for survival. It is a warning of what happens when a system designed to contain danger instead becomes its most potent incubator. Section 3, Number 8, Tadmor Prison, Syria. Our journey now takes us to the desolate heart of the Syrian desert. Here lies the ruin of our 8th entry, Tadmor Prison, located near the ancient city of Palmyra. Tadmor was not merely a prison, it was an extermination camp under the rule of Hafez al-Assad, and later his son Bashar. It was the final destination for thousands of political opponents, dissidents, anyone deemed a threat to the regime. For decades, it operated in near total secrecy, a black hole from which few ever returned. The stories that have trickled out are of a horror so profound it is difficult to comprehend. The danger at Tadmor was absolute and all-encompassing. It was engineered into the very architecture and routine of the facility. The prison was designed to inflict maximum suffering. Guards were trained in the art of torture, beatings with metal pipes and cables. Inmates were subjected to summary executions. The goal was not just to punish, but to dehumanize, to erase the prisoner's identity until nothing was left but fear and pain. The most infamous event in Tadmor's history occurred on June 27, 1980. Following a failed assassination attempt on President Hafez al-Assad. Defense brigades under the command of his brother, Rifat al-Assad, flew to Tadmor. They stormed the cell blocks. Over the course of a few hours, they massacred an estimated 1,000 prisoners in their cells. It was an act of pure, vengeful slaughter. This event, known as the Tadmor Prison Massacre, perfectly encapsulates the prison's purpose. It was not a place for justice or rehabilitation. It was a tool for political terror and mass murder. Even without massacres, daily life was a slow death. Inmates were kept in overcrowded underground cells with no light and little ventilation. Starvation was used as a weapon. Prisoners received barely enough to sustain life. Communication with the outside world was completely cut off. Families often did not know if their loved ones were alive or dead for years. Tadmor was finally captured and demolished by ISIS in 2015. But its legacy of terror cannot be erased. It remains an eternal symbol of the Syrian regime's brutality. A chilling testament to the horrors that can unfold when a state turns on its own people. Section 4, Number 7, Bang Kwang Central Prison, Thailand. Our countdown now moves to Southeast Asia, to the outskirts of Bangkok. At number 7, we find a prison known by a chilling nickname, the Bangkok Hilton. This is Bang Kwang Central Prison. It is Thailand's primary maximum security facility, housing the country's most violent criminals and those on death row. But it is also notorious for its population of foreign inmates, many serving life sentences for drug trafficking. The nickname is a cruel joke. This is no luxury hotel. It is a place of immense hardship, where the tropical heat and the weight of a life sentence combine to create a special kind of hell. The primary danger at Bang Kwang is the slow, grinding erosion of hope. For the first 3 months of their sentence, all new inmates are forced to wear heavy iron leg shackles. For those on death row, these shackles remain welded on permanently. The psychological toll is immense. The clang of iron is the soundtrack to daily life. Life moves at a glacial pace, measured not in days or weeks, but in decades. The system is designed to break you down slowly. Overcrowding is a severe and persistent problem. Cells built for a small number of inmates are often packed with dozens of men. They sleep side by side on thin mats on the concrete floor, with no personal space and no privacy. The heat and humidity are suffocating, creating a breeding ground for skin diseases and other illnesses. Food is meagre and often nutritionally poor, consisting mainly of rice and a thin soup. Inmates with money can supplement their diet by purchasing food from the prison canteen, creating a stark divide between the haves and the have-nots. Without outside support, an inmate's health can deteriorate rapidly. The prison's reputation is built on its harsh discipline and the bleak reality of its death row. Executions were historically carried out by a machine gun, though this has since been replaced by lethal injection. The knowledge that your life can be ended by the state at any moment adds another layer of psychological torment. While Bangkwang may not have the same level of gang-fueled anarchy as La Sabaneta, its danger lies in its systemic harshness. It is a place of profound despair, a slow-motion nightmare from which there is often no waking up. The Bangkok Hilton checks you in, but it rarely lets you check out. Our countdown now leads us into the frozen heart of Russia, to a place of profound isolation. At number 6, we find Petak Island Prison, also known as Volgodsky Piatak. This is Russia's answer to Alcatraz. It is a maximum security prison for the nation's most dangerous convicts, located on a small remote island in the middle of White Lake. The prison is surrounded by icy water for most of the year, making escape a virtual impossibility. But the freezing water is not the primary deterrent. The real prison is the psychological torment of absolute isolation. This is a place designed to break the mind as much as it contains the body, a cold, silent tomb for the living. The main danger on Petak Island is the crushing weight of solitude and sensory deprivation. Prisoners are confined to their small two-man cells for 22.5 hours a day. They are allowed only 2 short visits from family per year. The environment is one of stark monotony. There are no libraries, no workshops, no activities. The only view is of the grey sky or the blank wall of the cell opposite. This extreme isolation is a deliberate psychological weapon. It's designed to unravel the human mind, to strip away all sense of self and connection to the outside world, leaving inmates adrift in an endless sea of bleak, repetitive days. The physical conditions compound the psychological horror. The cold is relentless, seeping through the stone walls of the old monastery that forms the prison's core. Inmates have reported inadequate heating and clothing, leaving them to shiver through the brutal Russian winters. The lack of movement and stimulation leads to rapid physical and mental deterioration. Psychologists who have studied the facility report that within a few years, the extreme isolation can cause irreversible personality changes. Inmates become withdrawn, apathetic, and lose the ability to function. Their souls are frozen solid long before their bodies give out in this desolate landscape. This is a prison from which there is no return. The sentences are long, often for life, and the conditions ensure that even if an inmate were to be released, they would be a mere shell of their former self. Pitak Island is a modern-day dungeon, a black site of psychological warfare waged against Russia's most hardened criminals. It earns its place on our countdown not for overt violence between inmates, but for its cold, calculated and systematic destruction of the human psyche. It is a slow, silent execution of the soul, carried out on a lonely island far from the eyes of the world. We now travel to the heart of Africa, to a place that witnessed one of the most horrific events of the 20th century. Our fifth entry is not just a prison. It is a living monument to the aftermath of genocide. Welcome to Gitarama Central Prison in Rwanda. Built in the 1960s with a capacity for just 400 inmates, its population exploded in the mid-1990s. Following the 1,994 Rwandan genocide, tens of thousands of suspected Hutu perpetrators were rounded up and crammed into this tiny facility. At its peak, Gitarama held over 7,000 prisoners. The result was not just overcrowding, it was a humanitarian catastrophe of biblical proportions. The primary danger at Gitarama was the sheer density of human bodies. This was a place where hell was literally other people. With nearly 20 times its intended capacity, prisoners had no room to lie down. They were forced to stand day and night, packed together in squalid open-air yards. The floors were a slurry of mud feces urine. Gangrene was rampant as men's feet, submerged in filth, began to rot away. The stench of decay and disease was overwhelming, a constant assault on the senses. There was no escape, no moment of peace, just the constant pressure of bodies and the suffocating atmosphere of death. In these conditions, the line between living and dead became terrifyingly thin. Food was almost non-existent. A small amount of grain would be thrown into the crowds, sparking desperate, violent scrambles for a few mouthfuls. Starvation was a certainty. To survive, inmates resorted to the unthinkable. Reports from journalists and human rights workers confirmed widespread cannibalism. Men would bite chunks out of the dead, and sometimes the dying, in a desperate bid to stay alive. This was not the act of monsters. It was the final, horrifying consequence of a system that had stripped away every last vestige of humanity. It was the ultimate survival instinct in a place devoid of hope. The death toll was staggering. It is estimated that up to 1,000 prisoners died every month during the worst period. Some died from suffocation, crushed by the weight of the crowd. Others succumbed to dysentery, cholera, other diseases that tore through the population. Many more simply starved to death or were killed in fights over scraps of food. Gitarama Central Prison stands as one of the most horrific examples of prison conditions in modern history. It was less a place of justice and more a concentration camp, an open grave where thousands were left to rot. Its legacy is a harrowing warning of what happens when a nation's quest for justice descends into pure, unfiltered horror. Section 4, Number 4, La Modelo, Colombia. Our countdown returns to South America, to the sprawling city of Bogotá, Colombia. Here, at number 4, we find a prison whose name, the model, is a sick irony. La Modelo is one of Colombia's largest and most notorious prisons. For decades, it has been the epicenter of the nation's violent conflicts, a microcosm of the war between leftist guerrillas, right-wing paramilitaries, powerful drug cartels fought within its walls. The government's control over La Modelo is tenuous at best. The prison is effectively divided into territories, ruled by armed factions who wage a constant, bloody war for dominance, with the prison guards often caught in the middle or bought off entirely. The primary danger in La Modelo is the endemic, organized violence. The prison is split into two main wings, the north wing controlled by left-wing rebels and the south wing controlled by right-wing paramilitaries and traffickers. The central hallway that separates them is a no-man's land. Gun battles between the wings are not uncommon, with inmates using pistols, rifles, grenades that are smuggled inside with alarming ease. In this environment, an inmate's survival depends entirely on their allegiance. To be neutral is to be a target for everyone. Every day is a gamble. Every interaction a potential spark for a deadly confrontation. A horrifying discovery in 2016 laid bare the true extent of the prison's brutality. Investigators looking into the disappearance of over 100 people found human remains in the prison's drainage system. It was revealed that for years the rival gangs had been dismembering their victims and disposing of their bodies through the sewers. The prison wasn't just a place of murder, it was a slaughterhouse with its own gruesome disposal system. This revelation shocked the nation and the world. Life for an inmate is a state of constant vigilance. The sound of gunfire is a regular occurrence. Extortion is rampant, with powerful inmates taxing their fellow prisoners for everything from a bed to their own safety. The guards, outnumbered and often outgunned, can do little to stop the violence. They patrol the perimeters, but the internal workings of the prison are left to the brutal logic of gang warfare. La Modelo is a stark example of a state that has lost sovereignty over its own institutions. It is a battleground where justice is dispensed from the barrel of a gun, earning its reputation as one of the most violent and lawless prisons on the planet. Section 5, Number 3, Camp 22, North Korea. We now arrive at the top 3. Our journey takes us to the most secretive nation on Earth, to a place that officially does not exist. Hwoeryong Concentration Camp, Camp 22. This is not a prison for common criminals. A political prison camp, a compound of death larger than Los Angeles, built to incarcerate generations of class enemies and their entire families. For decades, its existence was denied, hidden from the world. The danger here is absolute, total. Extermination through forced labor, backbreaking work in mines, forced labor on farms, from dawn until dusk, 7 days a week, starvation rations, barely enough to survive, malnutrition everywhere. Defectors called them walking skeletons, bodies broken by labor and wasted by hunger. Hoarding a single kernel of corn could mean execution. Guards held life and death and used it without consequence. The most horrific 3-generation punishment. Parents, children, grandchildren, imprisoned for life. A policy meant to root out any seed of subversion. Children born and dying inside the camp. A life of starvation, torture and slave labor. Told they were prisoners for their ancestors' sins. A hereditary sentence, no escape. Defectors and former guards have testified. Public executions. Children forced to watch their parents being killed. Gruesome medical experiments. Chemical weapons tests. Biological weapons tests in a glass chamber. Satellite imagery from 2012 suggests closure and raising, but the legacy is indescribable evil. Camp 22, the ultimate machine of totalitarian erasure. Section 1, the runner-up. Number 2, Carandiru Penitentiary, Brazil. Our countdown has brought us to the precipice. We have journeyed through hells on Earth, the frozen isolation of Russia, the cannibalistic chaos of Rwanda. Now we arrive at our final 2. The runner-up, the second most dangerous prison on our list. A name that echoes through the history of Brazil like a gunshot. This is the São Paulo House of Detention, Carandiru Penitentiary. Before its demolition in 2002, it was the largest prison in South America. A sprawling concrete city that housed over 8,000 inmates, designed for less than half that number. Not just a prison, a failed state unto itself, complete collapse of official control. A terrifying ecosystem of violence and disease flourished. Guards were minimal, patrolling the perimeter, rarely venturing into the cell blocks. Real power belonged to inmate factions carving territories. Carandiru's danger was pervasive and chaotic. Extreme neglect, the state had abandoned thousands, a powder keg of desperation, rage and sickness. Life inside was a daily struggle against death. Overcrowding bred disease on an epidemic scale. A full-blown AIDS epidemic, an estimated 1 in 6 inmates infected. Medical care was almost non-existent. The sick left to die in their cells, sometimes for days. Sanitary conditions were abysmal. Overflowing sewers, rampant vermin infestations, a place where a man's life was worth nothing. A simple infection could be a death sentence, the air itself heavy with decay and despair. The sheer scale made it uniquely terrifying, a metropolis of misery. Inside, inmates built their own society. Shops, barter systems, hierarchies of power. But order was built on violence. Disputes settled with shivs. Smuggled firearms, extortion and assault were commonplace. The weak preyed upon without mercy. A human warehouse, thousands forgotten. A ticking time bomb. In 1992, that bomb exploded, one of the most infamous prison massacres in modern history. On October 2nd, 1992, the simmering tensions in Carandiru boiled over. A dispute between rival gangs during a football match escalated into a prison-wide riot. Inmates in Pavilion 9, one of the most overcrowded sections, took control. They were armed with makeshift weapons, but the situation, while serious, was not yet out of control. The prison director attempted to negotiate. However, the state government, under Governor Luis Antonio Fleury Filho, decided on a different course of action. They chose to respond not with negotiation, but with overwhelming lethal force. They sent in the military police. What happened next was not a police action to quell a riot. It was a massacre. Over 300 heavily armed military police officers stormed Pavilion 9. They met little organized resistance. According to survivor testimony, many inmates had already surrendered or were hiding in their cells. This did not matter. The police moved from cell to cell, executing prisoners at point-blank range. They fired indiscriminately into crowds of men who were trying to give up. It was a bloodbath. The official death toll was 111 inmates. No police officers were killed. The vast majority of the dead prisoners were found to have been shot in the head and chest, evidence of execution-style killings. The aftermath of the massacre was a scene of unimaginable horror. Forensic reports later showed that police had fired over 5,000 rounds of ammunition. Survivors told stories of playing dead amongst piles of bodies to survive. Survivors told stories of police dogs being used to attack wounded inmates. Survivors told stories of officers laughing as they killed. The state initially tried to portray the event as a necessary response to a violent uprising. But the evidence quickly pointed to a systematic slaughter of unarmed or surrendering men. The Carandiru massacre became a national trauma for Brazil, a brutal exposé of the violence at the heart of its justice system. The legal fallout from the massacre has lasted for decades. Colonel Ubiratan Guimarães, who led the police operation, was initially convicted of murder, but his conviction was later overturned. Dozens of other officers faced trial, with a complex series of convictions and appeals that left many feeling that justice was never truly served. The massacre ultimately led to the closure and demolition of Carandiru. Today, the site has been turned into a park and a cultural centre, but the ghosts of Pavilion 9 remain. Carandiru stands as a terrifying monument to the moment when the state becomes more dangerous than the criminals it is meant to contain. Section 4. The world's most dangerous prison. Number 1. ADX Florence, USA. We have reached the end of our countdown. We have witnessed torture, cannibalism, gang warfare, massacres. But one prison stands alone at the top of our list. It is a place that has refined punishment into a clean, quiet, and psychologically devastating science. The most dangerous prison in the world is not a lawless, overcrowded hellhole in a developing nation. It is a state-of-the-art, high-tech facility in the United States. At number 1, the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, Florence, Colorado. Better known as ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. ADX Florence is not dangerous because of inmate-on-inmate violence. There is almost none. It is not dangerous because of riots or gang wars. They do not happen. It is dangerous because it is the most perfect instrument of isolation ever conceived. It was built to hold the inmates that no other prison in America can handle. It houses the most violent gang leaders, international terrorists, spies, men like the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, 9/11 conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui, and drug lord El Chapo. It is a prison designed to completely remove a human being from the world, to place them in a tomb where they are alive but not living. The danger of ADX is the danger of total and complete psychological annihilation. Inmates are held in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Their cell is a 7 by 12-foot concrete box. The furniture, a bed, a desk, and a stool. The furniture is made of poured concrete and cannot be moved. The cell has a single 4-inch wide window angled upwards, so the inmate can only see a sliver of sky, never the ground or the surrounding mountains. They have no contact with other prisoners. Meals are delivered through a slot in the steel door. This is not just solitary confinement. It is a meticulously engineered environment of sensory deprivation designed to break the human mind. Everything about ADX is designed to enforce this isolation. The showers are on a timer in the cell. The small concrete recreation yard is an empty cage. The inmate exercises alone for 1 hour a day. Even when they are moved outside their cell, they are in full restraints, escorted by multiple guards. The hallways are designed so they will never catch a glimpse of another inmate. The silence is said to be absolute and maddening. The goal is to eliminate all social contact, to sever every human connection, creating a state of existence so bleak and so empty that it drives men insane. This is not punishment. This is a living death. Former warden Robert Hood described the facility as a cleaner version of hell, you know. The prison's purpose is not rehabilitation. It is permanent incapacitation. The inmates held here are considered so dangerous, so influential, that the government has decided the only solution is to bury them alive. They are cut off from the world, their influence neutralized, their voices silenced. But this absolute control comes at a terrible cost to the human psyche. The prison has been plagued by lawsuits and criticism from human rights organizations for its devastating mental health consequences. The danger is proven by the rate of psychological collapse. A class action lawsuit filed on behalf of inmates detailed a horrifying reality of life inside ADX. It described widespread instances of self-harm, with inmates cutting themselves with whatever they could find. It documented men engaging in conversations with the voices in their heads, smearing feces on the walls of their cells, and going on hunger strikes until they had to be force-fed. The lawsuit argued that the extreme isolation and sensory deprivation are a form of torture, leading to psychosis, paranoia, and a complete breakdown of personality. The prison's own records show a shockingly high number of inmates diagnosed with severe mental illness. Consider the case of a single inmate. They wake up in a concrete box. They eat alone. They have no one to talk to. Their only human contact is the gloved hand that passes a food tray through a slot. For 1 hour, they can go to the rec cage, a concrete dog run where they can see the sky but nothing else. Then it is back to the box. For 23 hours, day after day, year after year. For some, decade after decade. This is an existence designed to erase a person. It is a slow, methodical process of dismantling the mind, piece by piece, until nothing is left but a body occupying a concrete space. This is why ADX Florence is number 1 on our list. It represents the apex of punitive technology, a sanitized, clinical, utterly terrifying vision of carceral control. It is more dangerous than the chaotic violence of Carandiru or the state-sponsored torture of Tadmor because its cruelty is so systematic, so absolute, and so inescapable. It doesn't just kill the body, it is designed to kill the soul while the body lives on. It is a testament to how far a society will go to punish those it fears most, creating a silent, sterile hell that is, in its own way, the most brutal prison of them all. Section 1. The Echoes of the Condemned. Our countdown is over. From the high-tech tomb of ADX Florence to the cannibalistic pit of Gitarama, we have journeyed through the darkest corners of justice. A chilling pattern has emerged from the shadows, the calculated cruelty of a totalitarian state, the chaotic neglect of a failed state, the sterile perfection of a modern supermax. The result is the same. These institutions become factories of despair. They are places built on a foundation of dehumanization, where systems designed to uphold order become instruments of terror. Corruption, unchecked power, the deliberate stripping away of human dignity. That binds these hells on earth together. We have seen how a prison can become a mirror, La Modelo Carandiru, reflecting the brutal gang wars and social inequality of the streets outside. Tadmor Camp. 22. The ultimate tools of political regimes built on fear and paranoia. ADX. Florence reveals a modern obsession with total control, a belief that some humans are so dangerous they must be erased from existence itself. In every case, the line between punishing a crime and committing a greater one becomes terrifyingly blurred. These prisons are a warning, a testament to the darkness that can flourish when we decide that some lives are worth less than others. We must not forget the victims. Not just the victims of the crimes that sent these individuals to prison, but also the victims of the prisons themselves, the men executed by military police in Carandiru, political prisoners systematically tortured and starved in North Korea, political prisoners systematically tortured and starved in Syria, the inmates who lost their minds to the crushing silence of absolute isolation. Their stories are a vital part of our collective human experience, a grim reminder of the consequences of unchecked power. To forget them is to allow these atrocities to fade into history, to become mere statistics in a forgotten report, and to risk repeating them. As our journey concludes, let the silence of these cells and the echoes of their forgotten inmates linger. The horror of these places is not that they are exceptional, but that they exist at all, born from the same systems of justice that operate in our own backyards. They are the extreme conclusion of a path that begins with the simple idea that a person can be thrown away. We have unlocked the gates and shown you the abyss. The question that remains, haunting the silence after the screams have faded, is how close to the edge we are all standing. The countdown has ended, but the reality for thousands remains. Their nightmare continues long after our screen goes dark.